Now we have to look at Emily F. Murphy. Now, Emily F. Murphy was born in Ontario in the 1860s, born to a well-to-do family. And in 1916, they made Emily the first female magistrate in the British Empire. So, I mean, that was quite a position for a woman at the time. Along come about 1920, Maclean's magazine went to Emily and asked her to do a series of articles about the drug problems in Canada. So Emily went to work. But when she wrote the articles about hemp, it was just pure sensationalism. The most evil, addictive, dangerous, deadly plant, the evil seducer of women, just total nonsense. So as if that wasn't really bad enough, shortly afterwards she wrote a book called The Black Candle. More of the same dribble. But her writings, I think, may have had a bearing on what came next. 1923. This was the year that the Canadian government outlawed the medicinal use of the most medicinal plant on earth. Man's oldest known and safest medication, also known to be non-addictive and to be the most medicinal plant on earth, outlawed for medicinal use. Does this sound insane to you? By what right could any government outlaw this plant's medicinal use and deny it from their public? As far as I am concerned, 1923 was the beginning of Codex Alimentarius, the outlawing of the natural. And where better to start than the most medicinal plant on earth, especially since this plant put the profit margins of big money at risk. Officially, Codex Alimentarius was dreamt up in the 1960s. Currently, governments of today are getting ready to impose this on their own public. Soon, if you want to take a vitamin, you may need a prescription from your doctor. Big money wants to have total control of everything natural that has healing properties. Now, I don't know about you folks, but I don't find the specter of Codex Alimentarius very inviting. No one has the right to outlaw the natural, and it is just about time that the public tells their respective governments to butt out. Leave the natural alone. And by the way, why don't we get rid of that M word? You know, the marijuana. And call it what it is. Hemp. Even the Canadian government has problems with the M word, highlighted by the fact that they always misspell it. Maybe they should go back to the same term they used to outlaw it in 1923, Indian hemp. Now we have to speak about William Randolph Hearst, a name synonymous with yellow journalism. Well, Mr. Hearst, he owned many newspapers in the United States, and he had a hate-on for Pancho Villa and his marijuana-smoking army. So Mr. Hearst, he started publicizing the effects of this deadly new drug, marijuana. I mean, many of the articles it said if you smoked marijuana, it would drive you insane, you would kill your family, and oh, it was just utter nonsense. But at the time, the people swallowed it. Now we have to move into the late 1920s, early 1930s. A gentleman in the States by the name of Harry Anslinger. He was the head of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics. Now, Harry, he was married into the Mellon family, who were the DuPont's bankers, and he was connected to all the big money that wanted hemp gone. And with him, head of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, what better position? So, I mean, he began beating the drum very loudly to outlaw hemp. Then, around 36, 37, they come out with they started with the marijuana movies, Reefer Madness, and all of that nonsense. None of it was based in any truth. It was just more sensationalism. So, well, anyway, basically they went out about 1937 in the States. They started the Marijuana Tax Act. And this basically eliminated hemp being grown in the United States. But shortly afterwards, within 2-3 years, the Japanese invade the Philippines, and of course when they did, that cut off the hemp supply to the United States that they needed for their war effort. So all of a sudden, you know, hemp is wonderful stuff again. The Department of Agriculture in the States put out a video called Hemp for Victory. So all during the war, they grew hemp for the war effort. But at the end of the war, back to outlawed again. So in 1954, Mr. Anslinger had the United Nations declare the most medicinal plant to be non-medicinal. In 1961, the Single Convention Treaty. To be recognized as a member of the United Nations, a country must agree to prohibit hemp use to their people. Does that sound like a club you'd want to be part of? Well, now comes the 1960s. Reports coming from everywhere about hemp's ability to heal or to help many medical conditions. Asthma, glaucoma, pain relief, lowering blood pressure, etc., etc. Now we move to the 1970s. The results of most of the medical research regarding hemp that was done in universities was confiscated by the U.S. government. Why would they do such a thing if they were not trying to hide something? In the mid-1970s, Gerald Ford passed all rights to hemp research back to the pharmaceutical companies. The very people who already knew all about hemp and didn't want it around. Supposedly, the drug companies were going to create synthetic THC and take the high out of this medication. I find it very strange that drug companies would be so concerned about the harmless effects of an overdose of hemp. If you go to a doctor and tell them that you took too much hemp, they will tell you to go lay down, the effect will pass, and you are not harmed. So where is the danger in hemp? Does anybody know? Drug companies mass-produce medications from opium, which are very dangerous, addictive, and deadly. Not to mention the fact that you can hallucinate and get as high as a kite on them. But that's okay because that's used medicinally. Any high that hemp can produce presents no real danger to the patient, and drug companies know it. These large companies will not produce the natural medicine from the hemp plant because they can't patent it. The medicine has always been there, but greed and ignorance have kept it from the public. Synthetic THC, which can be patented, has never worked out very well for the drug companies. Many people found it to have undesirable side effects, and only a small percentage of people have found synthetic THC to be effective. Slowly, the drug companies again began looking at hemp, since it was the only natural source of THC. Currently, they are now looking at ways to patent hemp, and of course, any hemp medicine produced by such companies will come at a very high cost. In 1997, the Canadian government makes hemp a Schedule II drug, which means it can now be used in medicine. So the government was just opening the doors for the pharmaceutical companies. In 1998, Dr. David Suzuki, on his show The Nature of Things, aired an episode called Reefer Madness 2. I think this show was designed to help reintroduce hemp's medicinal use to the public and to help pave the way for Big Pharma to fill their pockets when they started selling it. Then, in 2003, I came on the scene and threw a monkey wrench into the spokes of big drug companies by telling people the truth about hemp medicine and why it was denied. For this, I have no regrets. I did the right thing by simply following my conscience and exposed a great deal of corruption within our system. Why does big money think they have the right to control everything, deny us the medicine, and in the end kill us with their chemicals for a profit? Putting up with such treatment reduces the human race to nothing more than a flock of sheep being led to the slaughter. How many must suffer and die before the human race is willing to stand as one and demand their rights? This is something that should have happened decades ago. But people on the whole just sit there in their apathy and wait for someone else to do it for them. If you are looking for someone to blame, we must blame ourselves. For to date, we are the ones who have not acted to bring an end to this travesty. Stand up and be counted, for your very life may depend on it.